Yes, let's continue the discussion. Let's now discuss 610 standard, SA 610, using the work of internal auditor. There are two ways in which internal auditor work can be used. One, type 1, work which they perform, that workings we will. Type 2, will take direct assistance from them. In the sense, as a part of our team, we will take them direct. Okay, now, so first of all, what is an internal audit? It's a function in an organization providing assurance consulting services to evaluate and improve the important processes in the company. So internal auditor mainly deal with three issues: governance, risk management, internal control. Governance, they evaluate processes related to ethics, values, performance, accountability, and communication. Yes or no? Risk information, control information, communication among top management, how everything is happening, that and all they evaluate. So one of the role of internal auditors is evaluation of governance processes. Two, risk management, they identify and evaluate significant risks so that they will contribute to improvement of internal control. See, internal control can be designed only when the risk is identified correctly. Next, they assist in fraud detection. And ultimately, internal control, they review and recommend improvements to the control. Already implemented controls, they do review and recommend improvements. They test controls on how they were designed, how they were implemented, and how they are operating effectively. And they provide assurance on internal controls which are relevant to audit. And above all this, they also examine financial and non-operating information, including testing transactions and balance. So these are the main objectives. And remember, further, they also do review operating activities. They also review compliance activities. They check economy, efficiency, effectiveness of operations, resources consumed, all that. Remember, internal audit scope is very wide. Okay, now compliance, they also review how the company is adhering to laws, regulations, how the company is adhering to management policies, how internal rules and regulations and directives are followed. So this is the entire internal audit function and their objective. So internal audit function means what? Objectives. Three objectives: governance, risk management, and internal controls. Two types of usage of work of internal. One, using IAF's work directly, where first, we use it if it is not prohibited by law. Further, external auditor evaluates the work before use. So it is partially substituting my work, the work which I have to do and gather evidence, right? Instead of me doing and gathering evidence, they already gathered evidence. That evidence we will substitute in our audit. Next, direct assistance. Internal auditor performs specific procedures under external auditor's direction, supervision, and review if permitted by law. Okay, just 1 minute. Yes. So we understood. There are two types of works. Okay, type 1 where you will use the work of the internal auditor. Type 2, direct assistance. Now, what is your responsibility as per this standard? See, you can use the work of internal auditor, but you only have ultimate responsibility. Just because you are using the work of internal auditor, you cannot blame him later on. If tomorrow, if something goes wrong, you only have to answer primarily. Next, external auditor is solely responsible for the opinion. This responsibility does not reduce by using the work of internal auditor. Now, external auditor is not required to use internal auditor work. There is no compulsion for you. Okay, if you want, you can use it. Discretion is to decide. It is your discretion whether to use it or not. Now, so if at all you are using, then 610 tells you how to. It provides entire framework, yes or no, so that you can avoid undue dependence on the internal auditor. Next, what is the objective of external auditor? Main objective: determine whether internal auditor or direct assistance can be used. If so, identify area to what extent it can be used. Type 1, yes, internal audit work is adequate. Suppose you are using that work, you took, see whether the work is adequate, sufficient or not. Type 2, adequately supervise, direct, review internal auditors who are performing as part of your team. So this is the objective of the standard. Next, now type 1 work. Suppose I wanted to use internal audit function for type 1. I need to check three important things: objectivity, competence, systematic and disciplined approach, are they following or not? Objectivity, yes, internal audit function, organization status, and policies and procedures supporting their independence. Like key factors: what is the organization status? Do they have a direct access to top management? Are they free from bias? Are employment decisions overseen by top management? Internal auditors employment decisions, are there any restrictions on internal auditors to communicate findings? And do internal auditors have any operational duties? These will give you an idea about objectivity of the internal auditor. Competence, evaluate IAF's competence and skills, like what kind of resources, the internal audit system, the internal audit size, resource, are they fully resourced, and how are they being hired? What is their technical skills? What is the financial reporting knowledge of frameworks? Like, what is the knowledge of internal auditors financial reporting framework? I mean, what is the knowledge of internal auditors on financial reporting frameworks? This will decide their skill. Next, do they have a systematic approach? Does internal auditors apply a structured approach along with quality control? Do they have any internal audit procedures, policies, controls, quality control system? Are there any existence of documented policies and procedures? Check out. By checking all these three, you will understand whether internal auditor work is worthy or not to use it. Now, and remember, objectivity and competence, no, they both are interrelated. Okay, both are critical. Stronger objectivity and competence, more likely to use the work. Objectivity alone cannot compensate for lack of competence. See, he is not competent, but he is very independent. That does, I mean, work is useless. Or he is not at all objective but competent. We can't believe that work. Able to understand? Next. Now, in the following circumstances, external auditors shall not use the work of internal audit function. They are lacking objectivity, they are lacking competence, they are lacking systematic and disciplined approach. So, what, you know, in exam, no, they might ask you like this only. So, write about objectivity. What are the key factors? 4 marks question. Understood? Or write about competence. What are the key factors? 3 marks question. Or they might ask you, why write about interrelationship of objectivity and competence? 3 marks question. Under what circumstances external auditor shall not use the work of internal audit function? 3 marks question. Any way they can ask. See, at some places I'm telling this. That doesn't mean only they are important. Every question is important, every concept is important, but at certain places I'll be telling. Okay, next. Nature and extent of IIF to be used by. To what extent I can use the work? What kind of works I can use? Very simple. You can use for testing operating effectiveness of controls. You can use their work for performing substantive procedure with limited judgment. You can use them for inventory counting. You can use them for tracing transactions through the systems, audit trail, all that. You can use them for testing with compliance with laws and regulations. Okay, examples. But remember, okay, fine. External auditors decide to use IAF based on nature, scope, and its relevance. So, how far the work is relevant, what nature of work they are performing, what is the scope of work that they have. Based on all this, he will use. Examples of what works we can use here we have given. You see, limited judgment here. If at all there is a more judgment involved, we prefer not to use. Next, circumstances where internal audit function work is used less. External auditor will perform the work directly when more judgment is involved. So, and when high risk is involved, when the internal auditor is lacking objectivity, when internal auditor is lacking competence. In these 4 circumstances, we majorly perform the work directly and use of their work less. Easy, straight question can come. Next, suppose no, I decided to use his work. External audit procedure, when he planned to use the work, first discuss planned usage. First you tell the internal auditor that I want to use your work, so that you both will coordinate. So that timing, nature, extent of IAF work. So you will tell him when you will use the work, so that he will also plan his work accordingly, so that it will be useful to the external auditor. Materiality levels, sampling methods, documentation, review and reporting. If I discuss the planned uses at the beginning itself, no, internal auditor when he is working, no, he will keep in mind my requirement, and accordingly he will be working. Next, review internal audit reports. External auditor reads internal audit functions report to understand procedures and finding, and external auditor performs sufficient procedures on the IIF's work. So whatever work he performed, right, take that work, you apply audit procedures on that, you verify whether that work is adequate for your purpose or not. Next, finally, there must be effective coordination between external auditor and internal auditor. There must be regular discussions. Meetings happens throughout the period, and external auditor informs internal auditor significant matters which will affect their work. Same way, internal auditor also shall inform external auditor any important matters. EA has access to IIF reports and is informed of significant findings from IIF. Easy. Coordination must be there properly. Next, that type 2, external auditor usage of IIF staff for direct assistance. Type 2, first of all, direct assistance means what? Internal auditor performing audit procedure under external auditor direction, supervision and review. What you need to evaluate? Competence you need to evaluate. Yes or no? External auditor must assess competence if not legally prohibited. Must inquire into relationships affecting objectivity. Nothing but objectivity and competence. If both are lacking, don't use it. That's what third point. Significant threats to objectivity, insufficient competence, do not use direct assistance. Fourth one, suppose I decided to use direct assistance, but certain works, few kinds of works, don't allocate them. What are they? Significant judgment works, high risky areas, work which is already performed by them only, and any decisions under 610. Under this standard you need to do certain works, right? Don't delegate to them. This is something you need to do. 610 standard says some works you need to do. That you only have to do. Next, finally, before you take them into direct assistance, get acknowledgement from management, get agreement from internal auditors both. So from management, that they will allow internal auditors to work under the direction of external auditor without any intervention. From internal auditor, they maintain confidentiality and report any issues that they are facing from management, like threats to objectivity, all that. Over 610 standard, over 10 minutes, neatly covered. Yes or no? That's it. Now let's do a quick revision of audit sampling standard 530. This particular revision you need to watch only after you finish the actual lectures of the sampling, or at least revision marathon, if at all I uploaded on the YouTube. To best of my knowledge, on 530 I didn't upload any revision marathon, but my old previous marathons were there on 530. So even if you watch that, you will be able to decode this. Okay, now, so audit sampling, the structure of the entire standard from the GOAT notes is maintained here in the chart notes also. So introduction to the sampling, first one. Earlier, no, we used to check all the transaction which is economically wasteful. Now, routine checking, that's called actually routine checking. Routine checking means what? Extensive vouching of all the entries without considering the concept of materiality. Whereas as the time passed by, there is a change from routine checking to checking of internal controls, checking of principles, checking of processes. Effective internal controls have reduced frauds and errors. In many companies, controls are implemented so strongly where the frauds and errors have been reduced. Therefore, auditor has to now decide extent of checking determined by auditor's judgment. Yes or no? So remember, ultimately the auditor's objective is to give opinion on the financial statements. And remember, auditors, is it compulsory for us to use sampling? No. Is it compulsory for us to apply sampling technique? No. But practically we have a limitation. We don't have an option. Yes or no? So, and whenever you are applying sampling, you should rely upon recognized sampling techniques like stratified sampling, simple random sampling, all that. Statistical sampling is scientific, reliable, and allows a fair opinion without checking all the. This is introduction to. In exam, they might ask you, write about introduction to sampling. Then next, what is the objective of auditor? What is the objective of auditor? What is the objective of auditor? The objective of auditor is what? First of all, audit sampling means what? Meaning, applying audit procedures to less than 100% of the items. 100% of the items is called as population. Less than that, if you are applying audit, then that is called audit sampling. What is the objective as per this standard? Ultimately, to obtain reasonable basis. See, you are verifying sample in order to draw reasonable conclusions on population. So SA 530 applies whenever audit sampling is used for audit procedures. So sampling approaches, we have two approaches. One is statistical and non-statistical. So what are the key elements in entire SA 530? What SA 530 is addressing? What SA 530 is covering? It talks about designing and selecting sample. It talks about performing test of controls and test of details using sampling techniques. It talks about evaluating sampling results. Yes or no? At the end of the last video in the sampling topic, we clearly discussed this entire chapter structure. Next. Now, what do you mean by population? And what are the characteristics of the population? Population meaning, okay, fine. Population characteristics directly. Population means all items in the, all items, all sampling units put together, we simply call it as population. Now you look at here. Meaning, population must be relevant to specific objective. By the way, characteristics are three. Appropriate. Population must be appropriate. Population must be complete. Population must be reliable. Appropriate means what? It must be specific to the audit objective. Like appropriate population, relevant to population, nothing but. If I want to check existence, actual transactions recorded. If I want to check completeness, supporting records. Remember that example? Purpose. Procedures applied on sample. Example, testing, 1 minute. What is this? Yeah, testing accounts receivable. Actually, this is a shortcut of the example. Testing accounts receivable overstatement, or you can say testing sales overstatement. Here instead of AR, you can also use the word sales. If you want to check sales overstatement, use actual receivables testing, listing, actual sales recorded. Suppose you want to test understatement, you need to verify not recorded one, but you need to verify supporting items like payments, stock registers, like that. Yes or no? Completeness. You must include all items throughout the entire period, throughout the entire audit period, for which year, whatever the year we're performing the audit, all the transactions must be included. Only then you need to select sample from. Yes or no? Then reliability. Population must be sufficiently complete and accurate. Auditor has to perform certain procedures to ensure reliability. Whether the population is reliable or not, first I will have to perform controls evaluation, all that. Then auditor must obtain evidence about accuracy and source. How do you know whether this is accurate? What is the source? Then if population is not reliable, sample will not be relevant for audit objective. Sampling unit. Individual items in population is called as sampling unit. Audit processes will be applied on selected sampling units with conclusions projected to entire population. Sample conclusions is equal to population conclusion. Whatever conclusion we get on sample, the same conclusion we take on the population. Suppose if sample conclusion, and if at all I check entire population separately once again and gets a different conclusion, then the sample is not representative. This is called sampling risk, yes or no? Then for trade receivables, sampling units can be customer balances, sales invoices, all that. Next, approaches. Types of sampling. There are two approaches, statistical and non-statistical. Auditor decided which approach to follow. And remember, sample size is not a differentiating factor between these approaches. Statistical, random selection, probability theory, we measure sampling risk reliably, we employ mathematical or statistical methods. Non-statistical, which does not have the features of statistical sampling. Then ultimately, whether you follow statistical or non-statistical, all that is unnecessary. Your sample must be representing all the characteristics of the population where the sample risk will be low. Yes or no? So representative sample should be mirroring the population. Sample should closely mirror the population, represent the population. Sample size must be sufficient so that you will get a meaningful result. So sampling process, we perform on test of control, we verify test of details. Why are we verifying controls? To find deviations in control so that our risk assessment will change. Okay, why do we perform test of details? To find misstatements. Yes or no? Able to recollect? Next. Now difference between statistical and non-statistical, it will be similar, which we already saw just now. So there won't be much difference even if you read also. Now, how sampling is different from traditional methods? From traditional methods, auditor will get a better satisfaction. Auditors can gain sufficient assurance with less checking using sampling, as even 100% checking cannot give you absolute satisfaction. Randomly chosen samples reflect all the population features. Sample reliability depends on effectiveness of control. Test of control, sampling assess control effectiveness. Strong controls permit smaller samples. Sampling is an estimation process with obviously some errors. Yes or no? Acceptable error tolerance is based on auditor's judgment. Tolerable error, nothing but. Factors for extent of checking on a sampling plan. What factors? Size of the organization, internal control state, books and records, tolerable error, desired confidence. Easy. Next, advantages of a statistical sampling. What are the advantages? Not proportion to the sample population size. Sample size need not increase in proportion to the increase in population. Sample size is objectively we select the sample. With a minimum sample size, we can calculate risk. We can calculate with precision. Estimates probable difference. Reduces clerical processing. No sampling, low non-sampling errors. Scientific and reliable. Any 3 or 4 points you can write in exam. Then when not to use sampling, 100% accuracy required for you because of legal requirement or regular requirement, whatever reason, then you can't use sampling. Technical knowledge gap, nothing but you don't know how to use a sampling. Insufficient sampling sampling skills. Better alternatives. There are more efficient ways to do. Suppose their small population size is very small, 100% verification gives you more clarity, then go with that method. Requirements as to sample design, sample size and sample selection. Sample design, consider the audit purpose, existence, completeness, valuation of what exactly you're checking, and population characteristic, heterogeneous or homogeneous. Sample size must be sufficient to reduce sampling risk to an acceptable level. Sample selection, ensure that every item in the population has a chance of selection. See, it may be equal chance, it may be unequal chance, doesn't matter, but everything should have a chance of selection. Then only that selection method is proper. Next, factors while choosing sample design. Purpose of audit. Yes or no? Purpose of audit. I think here just a minute. Yeah, I think both are right. Purpose of audit procedure, here you can simply strike off this, not required. Okay, you can strike off that, you can just keep this first point. Purpose of audit, nature of evidence you want, and what constitute misstatement you should first define, and test of controls and test of details. SS expected rate of deviation to determine sample size. Evaluate expected misstatement level, all that. Factors that that we will use while using sample design. Here no, better refer goat notes once, because this even if you read short notes material, you may not get sometimes the clarity, so better read goat notes material. Okay, next, stratification, dividing the population into discrete means nothing but different strata, different subgroups. Stratification improves audit efficiency. Objective, samples from all population segments. Monetary value, often uses monetary values for test of details. Stratum specific projection, obviously in a stratification, no, we project to stratum, then all the stratums we total, that is what combining all the stratums projection, correct? Next, value weighted selection. Monetary amounts, sample design prioritizes monetary amount, sample size, sample selection, everything is expressed in monetary terms. In case of test of details, individual monetary units will be there, right? They are nothing but monetary units. Value weighted selection, in a value weighted selection, the focus is on larger values. Larger value items will have a greater chance of selection. Even if it is higher chance of selection, the sample size will be smaller, and it is best to use it with random selection. Most efficient with random selection. You can also use with systematic sampling also. Stratification, you can value weighted selection, you can apply even in interval sampling, block sampling also, but it is best with random sampling. That's why monetary unit, stratified random sampling. Next, sample size and factors affecting them. Sample size, auditor decided sample size to reduce sampling risk. Lower the risk, larger the size. So sample size is decided by formulas, scientific formulas and professional judgment. Factors for test of control, more assurance, higher expected rate of deviation, higher desired assurance the auditor want. These are various factors. Yes or no? Expected rate of deviation, auditor's understanding of the business, personal changes, prior audit results, all that remember. Next, factors that will decrease the sample size. Here no, factors that increase the sample size. What factors decrease? You have higher tolerable rate of deviation, you can decrease the sample size. Population size on sample size decision has a minimum impact. Yes or no? For smaller population, sampling is not efficient. Next, then we have factors. Yeah, factors for test of details. The test of details objective is to detect MMS. Factors increase sample size, higher risk of MMS, higher expected misstatement, higher desired assurance than that tolerable misstatement is not exceeded by actual misstatement. Not exceeded by actual misstatement. That's actual complete sentence. Clear? And what factors will decrease? Greater reliance on other substantive. Suppose if you're relying more on other substantive, automatically test of detail sample size will decrease. Higher tolerable misstatement, sample size will decrease. Stratifying population with wide range of, like if you're stratifying with wide characteristics the population, you can reduce the methods of sample. Simple random sampling, equal chance for every unit, uses random numbers to avoid bias, ideal for homogeneous population. Stratified, divides heterogeneous population into homogeneous strata, subpopulation, samples drawn from each stratum. Auditor determines the number of stratas. Example, different percentages for, varying balances range up to 5 lakhs, up to 10 lakhs, how much percentage you should select, yes or no? Yeah. Systematic, sampling interval based on population size. Starting point will be random. Must avoid patterns aligning with some set of transactions, remember. And caution, risk of unrepresentative sample if interval is matching with some hidden pattern, that's a risk here. Next, monetary, value weighted selection, where evaluation is completely based on monetary amounts. Haphazard sample, no structured approach. And auditor will be avoiding bias, by the way, but this is not statistically superior. All units will have a chance of selection, whereas in simple random sampling, equal chance of selection will be there. Yes or no? Next, block sampling, selecting continuous items, adjacent blocks, limited coverage of diverse transactions, simple, economical, but prone to bias. Example, taking a block of invoices, easy. Next, sampling risk, meaning when auditor's conclusion from a sample differs from what would be found if entire population were tested. If at all entire population is tested, what we will be finding, that may not be matching with the sample related conclusion, then that risk is called as what? Sampling risk. In case of test of control, over reliance, under reliance, yes or no? Over reliance means what? Controls are not effective, but you are treating it as effective. Audit risk increases. Underlines means what? Controls are effective, but you are treating them as not effective. Because of it, audit efficiency affects. In case of test of delays, incorrect acceptance. Incorrect acceptance means what? Concluding that there are no mistakes when they actually exist in the population. Incorrect rejection. Concluding that there are a lot of mistakes and rejecting population that it is wrong, when in fact there are no material misstatements. Non-sampling risk. Risk that auditor reach erroneous conclusions for any reason other than sampling risk. Non-sampling risk cannot be measured mathematically. Examples: use of inappropriate audit, misinterpretation of audit evidence. Causes of non-sampling risk: human mistakes, misinterpreting results, relying on erroneous information. Finally, you need to perform procedures on sample. Apply appropriate procedure to each item selected. If a procedure is not applicable, perform it on a replacement. If replacement is not feasible, apply an alternative procedure. If procedures cannot be applied, treat the item as deviation in case of test of control, treat the item as misstatement in case of test of details. Next, nature and cause of deviation. Generally misstatements and deviation reasons, they will be common across various deviations, various mistakes. Generally in various transactions, a deviation is common, misstatement is common. Individually, most of the mistakes are related to each other. Evaluate nature and cause of the misstatement. If at all there is any anomaly, you need to have high degree of certainty that it is non-representative of population. So additional procedures are important. Anomaly is equal to misstatement or deviation demonstrably not representative of population. Next, in charts, no. Generally, personally, I don't recommend charts concept itself, but just for getting an overview. That's it. This is not at all, I personally tell everybody, this is only for an overview, not for depending on the exam purpose. This is just for overview, so that okay, fine, like instead of reading from goat notes some 7-8 pages, here it in 3-4 pages you can revise it. You will get a bird's view. So just for a quick recap of headings, side headings, brief matter, but for descriptive purpose you read only that goat notes always. Projection. Auditor project misstatement to population for a broad view of the scale. Remember, projection may not determine exact amount for recording in books of accounts. Correct? Exclusion. Anomalies will be excluded from projection. Effect of uncorrected misstatement is considered along with the non-anomalous misstatement. Non-anomalous means nothing but projected. Yes or no? Next. For test of control, uncorrected misstatements has to be projected. Yes or no? For test of test of details. For test of controls, no projection is needed because sample rate of deviation itself is population rate of deviation. Evaluation of sampling results. Auditor evaluates whether sample provided reasonable basis or not. High sample deviation increases material misstatements. High sample misstatement indicate material misstatement. Best evaluation is what? Projected plus anomalous. Both you need to consider and then evaluate. Correct? Anomalous misstatements are non-repetitive but included in aggregate calculation for total misstatement purpose. When projected misstatement plus anomalous is crossing tolerable, we assume that sample is inadequate. Remember, I told you this is written on a precautionary method. When projected misstatement is more than auditor expectation, then also unacceptable sampling risk is there. We assume that sampling is wrong. We increase the sample and we will once again do this. Conclusion. The closer the projected plus anomalous to the tolerate, the more likely actual misstatement is more than tolerable level. If sampling has not provided adequate basis, this is what if management will argue, then I will ask management to investigate and I will do extra procedures. I will test alternative controls. I will modify my substantive. And there are certain precautions which I should take when I am performing test checking. What precautions I should check? Study accounting system, internal control system, identify areas which are not suitable for sampling, plan and explain methods to the staff. I determine adequate sample size, select them without any bias, analyze the errors correctly. Analyzing means what? Nothing but anomaly, non-anomaly, all that. Yes or no? Stratify the transactions and balances appropriately so that you will get the representative sample. Able to understand. But remember, you will get maximum out of the chart book only when you understand the subject thoroughly. Otherwise, without understanding the words, without understanding it, there is no point of reading this. Are you clear? Now here, I think we found out one mistake in the chart notes where factors. Yes or no? Here, side headings were right. This matter was not given correctly. Correct? This I think was copy pasted. This one. Okay. These 2 points, please replace it. Even in the physical chart copy also, please ignore this. You can just use headings. That's enough. Clear? That's it. So refer goat notes. Confident? Actually, why these mistakes happens is, we do develop entire this in Canva. What happens is multiple team members will be sometimes no. For example, when we are working, somebody else also would have opened the same topic. When we saved it here, they would also saved some settings there in different file. This got missed, that got saved. When they bring it for verification, getting it, or when I am verifying, I'll verify based on my system. When they verify, I will tell them okay, approve it. Then they will take that and they will give me entire PDF just for my review. Since I reviewed already, I approve it. Getting the point? I'll review. Of course, I'll review because I reviewed here. Once again, the same I'm reviewing with PDF. Getting it? I review it. So that is the reason. The sync mistake is actually a syncing mistake. But if a chat book has to come this beautifully, we don't have another option. Only Canva we need to use. Canva or some other software only we need to use. You understood why this is actually a synchronization mistake. Synchronization. We would have actually updated this. So at 4 or 5 places this mistake happened. This entire book. But next edition, what we will do, whatever we did proofreading on the screen, off the screen we should take a print and then read once again. So proofreading will be done 4 or 5 times at least. In spite of it, you see this very minor, no, we can't notice that in this much volume of syllabus. Okay, at 4 or 5 places only this mistake happened, but at least, and one more thing, when we are reading normally proofreading, we will not get it because the intensity of reading is different. But when I'm taking a class, that intensity level is different. I can easily figure out a mistake in a class. Rather, if I'm sitting this book, if you give me this book, see, is there any mistake? Is there? I can't find out easily because that intensity won't be there. Fine, clear all of you? But you see how cleverly this represented entire matter, no? Same wordings we try to maintain at 2 or 3 places only the wordings might be little different in the chat notes, but 99% we try to maintain it. That's it. So with this, essay 530 is completely done. Clear? Confident? Totally we hardly covered 4.5 hours including this chat discussion. So next we'll start 520 standard. 520 will be little easy only compared to 530. It's quite easy. Yeah. Yes. Let's begin essay 520 analytical procedure chart revision, and as a prerequisite for every topic I will give an intro like this. You have to first watch my previous marathons on 520, get some understanding on 520, or if at all you already watched my EO batch, then you can listen this particular chart revision, because in chart revision it's all about a quick revision. It quickly revise. So you don't expect too much of explanation from the chart revision. Okay? It is like brushing up of all the concepts briefly. Next, analytical procedure, meaning and objective. So what is the meaning of analytical procedure? You evaluate, just a minute. So you evaluate financial information by analyzing relationships between financial and non-financial data. That's the meaning, correct? Then what is the objective? To obviously get the evidence and use substantive analytical to form overall conclusions at the end of the audit. Okay, whether financial statements are consistent with auditor's understanding of the entity, to know that analytical procedures are performed. Now in analytical, we analyze the data between financial and non-financial, right? And what do we find? We find fluctuations or inconsistent. That what we need to do? Investigate. When do we do investigation? When the difference is more than acceptable difference, correct? What is acceptable difference? We already discussed. Once again, we'll get it later. Next, examples, it's okay, not required. Then analytical procedure will have 2 types of analysis. One, comparisons. Another type of analysis is consideration of relationships. Comparisons, 3 types. Comparison with prior period, comparison with anticipated results like budgets and forecast, comparison with industry information, and trying to find out inconsistencies, differences, fluctuations, variations. Next, relationships. Predictable pattern, like compare relationship within financial elements which are expected to follow predictable pattern. Sales we can predict, purchases we can predict. If both can be predicted, closing stock can be predicted. Yes or no? Some expenses, repairs and maintenance we can predict. Some expenses like advertisement research we can't predict. Okay, then financial and non-financial. In analytical, we use relationship between financial and non-financial. For example, there's an increase in number of employees, there must be increase in sales. If that is not happened, we will investigate the fluctuation. So analytical procedures use comparisons. Analytical procedures use relationships between financial and non-financial data. Next, purpose. We use comparisons. Ultimately we compare or we study relationships, yes or no? To check what? Whether account balance is looking reasonable or not. Yes or no? So because of this comparisons and relationship study, we will identify unusual transaction, unusual mistakes, unusual manipulations, all that. Correct? Suppose no unusual transactions you found. What is unusual transaction? Events, amounts, ratios, trends, whatever that will signal some risk of MS. So analytical procedure benefits the auditor to identify unusual items. Analytical procedures will benefit the auditor to identify risky areas. So in this way, analytical procedure is will be useful to the auditor. Next, various examples, any 4 or 5 examples you have to study. I already told in the GOAT notes that particular EVO session also. Next, timing. When should we perform? We can perform it in planning, testing, and completion. But most importantly, analytical is performed in planning stage. During the planning phase, it will help the auditor to identify potential mistakes. Benefits. This, it will help you to decide nature, timing, extent of further audit procedure. Means analytical procedure will help you to plan your audit. Yes or no? An analytical procedure at the time of planning uses both financial data and non-financial. Correct? Now, what is substantive analytical procedure? First of all, substantive procedures includes 2. Substantive analytical procedure, test of details. Both are part of substantive procedures. Substantive analytical is applied when the auditor judges it can reduce the risk to acceptable level. If auditor feels that analytical procedure will reduce the auditor, he will use it. Inquiries. So what auditor will do? Before substantive analytical procedure is performed, first auditor will inquire about the data regarding its reliability and availability. Once data is given, auditor will perform analytical, then he will get some result. That result he will investigate. Yes or no? And sometimes auditor will also use entities analytical procedure data also. And so that is used. Management data he will use when it is reliable. Yes or no? Next. What are the factors for substantive analytical? Remember in ICA book this was used as audit, substantive audit, but actually it's wrong. It's actually substantive analytical. Can I use substantive analytical procedure or not? It is determined by various factors. First to know data availability. First data should be available. 2, data must be disaggregated. 3, account type. Substantive analytical is useful for more of income statement items, not for balance sheet items. And not only that, source of the data. Yes or no? And a significant class of transactions where judgment is involved, it is less suitable. Those transactions which are routine, which are predictable, good for substantive analytical procedure. Correct? Predictability. Effective, analytical procedure is effective where relationships are predictable. Analytical procedures are best when for checking completion, valuation, less for rights and obligation, existence and all. And if risk is high, use test of details. SAP alone may not be. See how best it is, like the GOAT notes, whatever is there, we are able to figure out all the keywords. Yes or no? But if you want to understand better the chart notes, you need to read from GOAT notes. Next, what are the techniques of substantive? Trend analysis, ratio analysis, reasonableness test, structural modeling. Trend analysis, we compare current balances with prior period to spot unusual changes, unusual trends. Check if figures align with known trends, whether figures are matching with trend, known trend or not. Ratio analysis, we study relationship between various account balances, transactions. Correct? We detect mismatches by comparing ratios across time. Reasonableness test, no, predominantly use non-financial data to know whether an account balance is logical or not, reasonable or not. Helpful for accrual of income statement, whatever. Anywhere you can use this reasonableness test. Next, structural modeling, it's a statistical tool where they predict account balances. Easy or not? Any three you need to write in exam. Can we use analytical procedure as a sole substantive procedure? It depends upon suitability, it depends upon reliability of the data, it depends upon accuracy of the expectation, it also depends upon acceptable difference. Now, auditor must assess if analytical procedure is appropriate for a particular session based on risk of MS and test of details. Yes or no? Data must be evaluated for source, comparability, relevance, controls. Auditor then develop the expected value. See, for this, we have J, K, L, M. These are the points which are talking in depth about these 4. So this is typically a consolidation of all the 4 subsequent points. The subsequent points we'll see. Suitability of a particular analytical procedure for a given assertion. SAP works best for large volumes of data, correct? Which can be predicted over time. Yes, analytical procedure we can apply on an assumption that relationships will exist among various data and depends on effectiveness of detecting whether a particular analytical procedure is suitable or not. It depends upon how effective it is in detecting material misstatement. SAP, substantive analytical procedure, is it suitable? It depends upon its ability to find mistakes. Predictive, even a simple model can be effective sometimes. And remember, analytical procedure offer different levels of assurance, and factors influencing suitability, nature of assertion, risk of MMS. Sometimes SAP analytical procedure is stronger when you are using with test of details for certain assertions, for same assertions. Test of details, SAP plus TOD for same assertion, that will give you a stronger result, that will give you more clarity. Able to recollect? Next, factors determining reliability of data. What are the factors? Source is more reliable when it is coming from independent source. Comparability, data must fit the entity's context. Like for example, broad data, industry data may not be suitable for entities specialized in specialized products. Reliability, more reliable if expected outcome, like for example, if budgets are for expected outcomes, budgets are really seriously taken, then only that is more relevant data. Controls over preparation of data, you need to test how well controls work, and you should also test controls over non-financial data. So if controls are effectively working, then the result of analytical procedure will be more effective. Then auditor has to evaluate whether expectation is sufficiently precise. Precision improves when expected results are predictable. Like expected results must be predictable, only then the accuracy will be there. SAP analytical is more effective when applied to disaggregated data rather than consolidated data. And design of SAP depends upon availability and reliability of financial data and non-financial data. Amount of difference that is acceptable. What do you mean by amount of difference that is acceptable? The difference between recorded amount and expected value. Expected value means what? Result of analytical procedure. What is the result of analytical procedure? Some expected value you develop. That value you compare with recorded amount. If there is a difference up to a certain level, we can accept it without any further investigation, and that level is called as acceptable difference. Yes or no? It is influenced, the acceptable difference is influenced by materiality, level of assurance, risk of MMS. Higher the risk, more evidence is required. Therefore, lower acceptable difference without investigation. If high risk is there, difference, acceptable difference size will decrease. As risk increases, acceptable difference decreases. That's what actually I told you to slightly rectify. That one letter, if you rectify, that will be enough. Goat notes I told you, yes or no? That's it. To ensure sufficient, appropriate audit evidence. Then, finally, if at all auditor identify fluctuation, relationships differ significantly from expected value, where the fluctuation is more than acceptable difference, what auditor first will investigate management. We will ask them why there is a fluctuation. We will see the response given by them. If response given by them is not adequate, auditor will perform additional procedure to detect any material misstatement. Finally, overall conclusion at the end of the audit. What? To corroborate conclusions from audit of financial components. See, I will do overall conclusions to support. Okay, whatever my understanding of the entity and its environment, analytical procedure will corroborate me, support me, helps in forming reasonable conclusions, may uncover, because of this overall conclusion at the end of the audit, you may discover unrecognized risk earlier. Yes or no? If at all you identify any unusual items at the end of the audit, you have to revise the risk assessment, you have to modify further audit procedure, again you redo it. That's it. Analytical procedure is done. It took hardly 11 minutes. The original chapter we discussed 1 or 40 minutes close. Original, the standard. Understood? Able to recollect, no? But you read once again, go notes, thoroughly revise, then come back and see. It will be like a quick recap. This is only for mind mapping. Like in exam, if a particular question comes, at least if you get a diagram, that keywords, you can write at least something without missing any points. Just for retention purpose only, this one. That's it. Minimum retention purpose.